When we hear the word magician, we normally think the guy in Branson pulling a rabbit out of his hat while quietly contemplating suicide, or that one guy that freaked minds. Not saying any names, but Dave Navarro would probably consider him a little over the top. That's right, David Blaine. I said it. When we hear the word wizard, we usually think about the Gandalfs and Voldemorts, but never the Crowleys, Nostradamuses, and hardly ever the subject of our story here. This guy right here, Shakespeare's Prospero, Dr. John Dee. Dee was born in Tower Ward, London on July 13, 1527, to the courtier Roland Dee and his wife Johanna. His father was Welsh and migrated to London to become a courtier to Henry Tudor, also known less famously as Henry VII. After attending Chelmsford Chantry School, Dee entered St. John's College, Cambridge in 1542 at the age of 15, where he was renowned for being a very smart boy, excelling in the maths and science. His work on the visual effects of a production of Aristophanes' piece helped set Dee's path towards becoming a wizard. He'd go on to travel abroad and even do some lecturing about Euclid, the geometry guy, in Paris before returning to England, where in 1553 he would be arrested for the crime of calculating. He was a calculator. Many at the time viewed things such as doing the math and science as a dark art under Mary Tudor, but in actuality his arrest was mostly political, as he had done horoscopes for Queen Mary and Princess Elizabeth, eventually raising the charges to treason. However, after spending some time in the dungeons and watching them haul men off to be executed for crimes like math, apparently, Dee was exonerated and ultimately released. After a failed attempt to start a national library under Queen Mary, Dee would go on to establish the largest library known at the time at his home in Mortlake. He became known as a great man and teacher of maths and sciences, teaching the pluses, minuses, divisions, and multiplications to common folk. Basically, he was like London's kind of dog Sesame Street. Dee's notoriety grew, and with the coronation of Elizabeth I, he would be welcomed into her court as her official astronomer. It was believed that Dee had been asked to become a secret spy for the Queen, even signing his correspondence letters with her with 2 zeros and his lucky number 7, later making him the inspiration for the popular character Sean Connery. In 1564, he wrote a really deep and magic-y book called the Monas Hieroglyphica that not a lot of people understand due to secret oral traditions at the time, so it's kind of like a Wu-Tang deep cut. Throughout this time, into 1577, Dee would make several major academic contributions to the old mathematics before deciding that he was just going to go kind of crazy. In the 1580s, Dee had become despondent and frustrated with his work and the pluses and minuses. So, like any good polymath, getting mad with the adds and subtracts, he thought, I'm going to go conjure demons and angels, because he's an angel of a guy, that John Dee. His early attempts at communing with supernatural forces via scrying proved disappointing until 1582 he met Edward Kelly, who was either a skilled mystic or even more skilled guy from Lost level con man. The two would become inseparable, attempting to commune with supernatural forces every night, even beginning to transcribe the language of said forces, more commonly known as Enochian. By 1583, Dee had become out of favor with the Queen, going bankrupt, and thought that maybe he should take the family along with Kelly's family to Poland, where they would seek court there. Even though it ultimately was a big gnaw dog, eventually Kelly was like, hey, we should bang each other's wives. And while Dee protested at first, he over time agreed, making this whole thing way kinkier than it has any right to be. Swingers. After 6 years in Poland, Dee returned to Mortlake, only to find that his library had been vandalized and farted on. Everyone in England was a dick to him because he knew math and talked about a secret language he had made with some demons. he attempted to seek favor with Elizabeth once more, who had probably grown tired of just how exhausting this guy could be, so she shot him down left and right until finally throwing him a bone and making him warden of Christ College, Manchester, where he would become a Mr. Belding-like figure, mocked and humiliated at every corner by people 30 years younger than himself. He would once again return to London in 1605, poor and extremely unpopular. There he would remain extremely unpopular until his death in 1608. His gravestone would ultimately come up missing, most commonly thought to be the result of Elizabethan animal housery. In 2013, some people would place a plaque there to commemorate Dee like he was some sort of eternal employee of the month. While Dee might have died in obscurity, his legacy still lives on as he very much became the prototype for the real-life wizards like Aleister Crowley and Alan Moore. Often made a villain during his time alive for believing in crazy things like the earth revolving around the sun, math, and the secret language of demons and angels, Dee now has found himself a new appreciation among really weird people who still use his and Kelly's Enochian language for their orgies. I mean magic rituals.